I threw out your stuff because it was in the way.
Just as I thought, it was Caroline's doing. All of my things, from clothes to cosmetics, were gone. Thankfully, I had taken my computer with me when I left, so it was safe. But this was really pushing my buttons. Robert was smirking right alongside Caroline. Caroline started it, and Robert helped her. Why the blank stare? If you need something, go pick it up from the trash.
And you might as well move out. You're in the way, old lady.
I've been lenient because she's his daughter from another marriage, and I've never challenged Robert's parenting decisions. But her attitude has been disrespectful from the start, and after ignoring me for a year, she threw out all of my things. Anyone would be mad after all this. They have no idea what they're in for when I get angry. What pitiable folks they are. It's decided I'm getting a divorce. Who knows if Caroline will make it to college, and Robert, with all his hobbies, will surely get stressed out when he can't afford them anymore. And first off, he won't have a house anymore. It'll be a sight to see.
Oh, I see. I'm the nuisance. Fine, I hope you two regret it. Don't come crawling back to me later. No matter how much you cry or get angry, it won't concern me anymore. Regret it, all right?
My name is Nancy Rivers. I'm 38 years old and own a house. I hate when people get too nosy about my job, so I say I've renovated my parents' home and live there. I originally started with investments, and even after switching to high-risk, high-reward stocks, my assets have been growing steadily. My father was into investing in stocks, and taught me the ropes ever since I could remember, so while I'm self-taught, I believe it suits me. Then, my encounter with Robert happened when he joined the gym I'd been attending for years. We happened to wear sportswear from the same brand, which led Robert to strike up a conversation. We started chatting more and more every time we met, and soon began hanging out. Robert had a lot of hobbies, like the gym, golf, cars, fishing, and he was so knowledgeable about them all. I was never bored with him. When he asked me out, we had this conversation.
Ever since I first saw you, Nancy, I couldn't get you out of my mind. I want us to date with marriage in mind. Yes, I'd love to. I'm so happy, I felt the same way.
There's something I have to tell you. What is it? Well, I'm divorced. My ex-wife didn't understand my hobbies and always negated them. That's why we split up. I have a daughter with her, and I've been taking care of her at my parents' home. I'm sorry, I was worried that if I told you this, you wouldn't want to be with me. Are you okay with all this?
Well, if I'm gonna become her stepmom, I'd better get on good terms with her, right?
Nancy, does that mean?
I don't mind all that. No matter what happened, my feelings for you won't change.
After that, we began dating. Back then, Robert's daughter, Caroline, was in 6th grade and I thought she was a sweet and friendly child. Whenever we met, she always greeted me with a bright smile and seemed so happy.
Nancy, I'm so glad to see you today. I love shopping for clothes with you. Oh, Caroline dear, you're truly adorable. Makes me want to buy you something.
Look at you two having fun. Let me join in too.
Dad's just being jealous.
Indeed, Robert sure gets jealous easily. I always felt that Caroline was really attached to me. I'd often buy her clothes that suited her, and I used to bring cake every time I visited, which she always loved. One evening, during dinner, Caroline quietly mentioned it'd be so much fun if Nancy were with us every day. That became the catalyst for Robert to propose to me. It happened about 2 years after we started dating. When Caroline started 9th grade, given that I was living in a single-family home, both of them moved in with me. At that time, I hadn't told Robert about how I earned my living, only mentioning that I was a remote worker. I once told an ex-boyfriend in detail about my income. But after I did, he started mooching off me, making it hard for me to break up with him. I had intended to tell Robert after our marriage, but time flew and I completely forgot. A year and a bit after we started living together, with Caroline nearing the end of her freshman year in high school, I began to notice a change. Both Caroline and Robert's attitudes towards me had visibly soured. Robert's take-home pay was roughly $2,700, and he used to contribute around $1,000 for household expenses since we lived in a house I owned. However, now he only put in $200, spending the rest on himself and Caroline. When they ran out, both would come asking me for more. They seemed to be spending a lot on their hobbies. Robert was lavish in his spending. One day, I had to address the issue. "Hey, Robert? Can we talk? Now? I gotta play my game, so make it quick."
Caroline's spending seems excessive. Buying her designer items and expensive things while she's just a high school freshman? How much allowance are you giving her? And Robert, while it's fine to have hobbies, aren't you spending way too much? You're also making in-app purchases, right? Why not sell stuff you don't use?
How much did I give Caroline again? Like $1,000 or something, right?
I want to buy her everything she wants, and she says there are a lot of places she wants to go.
Caroline's my precious only daughter, so why not? And don't interfere with my hobbies. Though even if you did, I wouldn't listen. I work hard every day to feed y'all, you know?
What?
You're saying I can't even have hobbies?
Wait, what? You gave her $1,000? What on earth were you thinking? Hold on, are you saying you're giving her $1,000 a month and she's still asking me for allowance? In that case, I need to talk to Caroline too. But let's address your excessive spending first, okay? It's not about you quitting your hobbies, it's about you spending too much. Do you even realize how much money you're putting into the house? It's just $200, how are we supposed to live? Hey, don't be too hard on Caroline, alright? She's just a kid. And so what if I spend too much? It's my hard-earned money. Look, I've always been the type to dive in headfirst when it comes to things I like. And I'm contributing $200, isn't that enough? Your place is already paid off, so we don't have expenses there. Plus, you're working too, right? We've managed until now, so don't make a fuss. Yes, it's your money, but there should be limits, right? Just because it's a paid-off house doesn't mean there are no taxes or utilities. Our bills can't be covered with just $200. I'm working too, but the point is, you're overspending.
At my parents' house, $200 was enough. If there's a shortfall, why don't you cover it?
You mean at your dad and mom's place, right? They're both still working, aren't they? And the size of their home is different from ours. We have to pay more because of that. Are you subtly telling me my parents' house is small? That's it, I've had enough of this. Just go away, I'm not listening anymore. You're so bothersome, Nancy.
No, Robert, that's not what I meant. You brought up the subject of money in the first place. Why cut me off when I'm still speaking? While I was still talking, Robert put on his headphones and started playing a game, so I couldn't continue the conversation. I had to tell Caroline something important, but she was out having fun and I didn't know when she would be back, so I couldn't find the right time. Right after Caroline started her junior year of high school, the weather was bad and we all happened to be home, so I suggested we have a family meeting. Despite the clear reluctance from the two of them, I managed to convince them, saying it wouldn't take long. We decided to have the talk in the living room. "Caroline, I heard from Robert that he's been giving you $1,000 as an allowance. But every month you also come to me asking for money. What are you spending all that on? Also, you've been staying out too late too often. Enough is enough.
Why are you butting in? You're not even my real mother. It's none of your business what I do. Leave me alone." You might not be my biological child, but right now, I am your mother. If you continue spending money like this, you're gonna face issues in the future. That's why I'm concerned. If you don't tell me why you need so much money, I won't give you any. Ugh, this is so annoying. I just have a lot of things I want. There are social commitments too, Can't you just stay out of it?
Exactly, high school students have their own social lives, you know. Don't be so naggy.
I get that she has friends and that teenagers want brand name stuff. But this is about the amount she's getting. What's your deal? Everyone gets this much, it's normal. Things are different from when you, old lady, were young. Back then, you'd get me cakes and all the stuff I wanted without asking. But now you're acting all high and mighty. It's kinda funny. Hold on, did you just call me old? I am your mother, Caroline. It's my responsibility to tell you when something isn't right.
I got a bit heated and responded strongly. It seemed Caroline didn't like that. She made an annoyed face, clicked her tongue loudly, and began to raise her voice.
Seriously, this is so annoying. I thought we were playing Happy Family because you'd buy me anything I wanted. Why are you acting all high and mighty now? Just forget it, I'm gonna act like you don't exist, so stop interfering. Wait a minute. Nancy, enough is enough. You're going too far. Apologize to Caroline. What? Am I the bad guy now? Playing Happy Family? What does that even mean?
I thought you'd be an easygoing woman. Guess I was wrong. Just apologize, okay? I was taken aback. I hadn't realized that Robert felt that way too. From the next day, Caroline completely ignored my existence. Robert texted me in the morning, "I won't talk much until you apologize to Caroline." As days went by, I started to question the purpose of us being together and began contemplating divorce. It had been about a year since Caroline started ignoring me. Caroline was in her senior year of high school. Robert and Caroline continued their reckless spending, and even when I stopped giving them money, they would withdraw funds from the account meant for bills. Even though I was depositing nearly $2,000 every month, they withdrew it all. Due to their continuous behavior, I made a decision and approached Robert for a discussion. "Robert, do you have a moment? I need to talk." "What's up? You finally gonna apologize to Caroline?" "No. I don't see a reason for us to be together anymore. I want you to leave this house."
Excuse me? Have you lost your mind?
"No, I'm serious." All right. Give me some time to think, okay? I need to talk to Caroline too.
I'd like you to leave in 3 days. I've taken the day off work and will be at the gym. Please pack your things and leave by the time I get back.
Oh, in 3 days? Got it. I couldn't tell if Robert was really listening, but I said what I had to say. I had a feeling that they both would not want to stay in the same house as me. 3 days later, I spent some time at a cafe, did an extended workout at the gym, and then returned home. Seeing their shoes still in the house, I assumed they were still around. But when I opened the shoe cabinet to put away my gym shoes, I was shocked. All of my heels, pumps, and boots that were supposed to be there were gone. I had a bad feeling and hurried inside. When I reached my room, everything was missing. I couldn't find a single piece of jewelry anywhere. As I rushed to the living room, I saw Caroline and Robert. Both were smirking at me. Then, after a year of silence, Caroline spoke to me. "Oh, you're back. What's the rush?"
Where's my stuff?
"We thought your things were in the way, so we threw them out." Just as I suspected, it was Caroline's doing. All my belongings, like my clothes and makeup, were gone. Thankfully, I had taken my computer with me, so it was safe, but this is just too much, and I'm really ticked off. Robert and Caroline are both smirking together. It was Caroline who started it, and Robert just helped her.
What's with that blank look? If there's something you really need, why don't you pick it up? By the way, why don't you just leave?
You're in the way, old lady.
Oh, I see. I'm a bother, huh? Fine, I hope you both get what's coming to you. And don't come crawling back later. It won't matter to me whether you cry or get mad, I hope you regret it.
Regret? Why would we cling to an old lady like you? That's right, just like Caroline said.
We're the ones doing you a favor by being married to you. We might appreciate you for being married, but we won't ever cling to you in tears.
Hearing this, I took my belongings and headed to a motel. Luckily, there was a room available and I was able to stay the night. Watch me. Thinking that, I did what I needed to do. And then, about a month later, my phone rang loudly. It was from Robert. I knew he'd call eventually. It was so predictable, I couldn't help but chuckle. I let it ring for a while before answering.
Hey! Nancy, where the hell are you? Enough is enough, come back home. Oh, I'm just the bothersome old lady, remember? Enough already. If you're sorry, come back and live with us.
Live together? You have quite a sense of humor.
Why don't you just sign the divorce papers I put in the mailbox? Mailbox? Divorce papers? What are you talking about?
Ugh. Haven't you checked the mailbox? Why don't you look now? Just wait. I guess he went to check the mailbox because I could hear footsteps over the phone. I decided to wait. After a bit, I heard the sound of him hurrying back. He probably was shocked by what he found.
Nancy! There's an overdue notice for the electric bill. What's with this amount? But the lights are still on, and the water's hot. I paid it, so why did it come?
Robert, you don't know anything, do you? We have an all-electric house, so the bill's always been that much. And if there's an overdue notice, the due date is the end of this month, right? You'd better pay it. I'm not living in that house anymore, so I haven't paid. Plus, I changed the auto payment to your bank account. You know electricity doesn't get cut off immediately if you don't pay, right? Didn't you even know that?
What the hell? There's no money in my account to auto pay. Please, pay it. I'm broke till my next payday.
Ah, why do I have to pay for you guys? Isn't the cell phone bill due soon?
Hold on. Nancy, did you switch the mobile account to mine too?
Yes. Both yours and Caroline's charges are being deducted from your account. Caroline's too? How much is it gonna be in total? You probably wouldn't know. You spend money on in-app purchases, and Caroline shops using a payment method that bills along with her cell phone. Including mine, it's about $2,500 a month.
What? That much? I don't think I spent that much on games.
Well, when you weren't spending, it seems Caroline was buying accessories. You spend at least $800 every month, don't you? Don't you realize that? By the way, my share was just a bit over $100, I think.
I can't do this. There's no way I can pay that much.
Robert, want me to clue you in on something? What is it? Our monthly expenses, including the allowance I've been giving you both, amount to almost $8,000. Did you know that? House taxes, utilities, your car loan, mobile bills, the money spent on your hobbies, the money I gave Caroline, and everything else. It's roughly this amount.
Wait, what? $8,000? Hey, there's no way.
It's true. Remember when I got mad at you for overspending? There were times when it even crossed $10,000. Wasn't it when Caroline bought 3 designer bags? Well, I could pay it because it was me. Hold on, Caroline was spending that much? There's no way I can afford that. And what do you mean you could pay because it was you? What's that supposed to mean? Robert, you really didn't know much about my job, did you? Anyway, I'll have to go to the house for some business soon, so I'll tell you then.
Wait, are you coming back? Thank God. Please come back soon.
Huh? What are you talking about? It will be when I see you next. Meantime, you'll have to handle the payments yourself, okay? With that, I abruptly hung up the phone. Feeling somewhat refreshed, Robert lounged around when his phone rang again. He quickly answered upon seeing the caller ID. Now that a date was set, I decided to leave a message. I told Robert I'd see him in a week and then I muted only his contact number. A week later, when I arrived, Robert had taken the day off and was eagerly waiting for her. I figured he'd be there, but was still debating whether or not to talk about my job directly. Considering all possibilities, I decided I'd bring it up just before leaving. I've been waiting. Who are those guys? Multiple boyfriends? No. They came to look at the house. Why? I'll tell you everything before I leave. First, what did you do about the payments? And the divorce papers?
I had to beg my parents to lend me some money. I need your help from next month, okay? We're not getting a divorce. No, I'm gonna get a divorce. I won't pay. Why the hell not? Then why'd you come back?
To get your signature on the divorce papers. You thought I was here to check out the house?
Hell no. I'm not divorcing, so I ain't signing any papers. What do you mean by checking out?
Forget about the checking out for now. If you don't sign the divorce papers, Caroline will be mad at you. If you don't want Caroline to hate you, you'd better sign them. Otherwise, I might consult a lawyer and ask you to pay back all the money I've spent on you, okay?
Fine.
Oh, did the mention of a lawyer scare you? I just don't want Caroline to hate me. And if you're gonna send me a bill for everything, I'll just get a divorce. But let's live here together. What? No way. Just then, the men who had come with Nancy returned from checking out the house. Turns out, they were contractors specializing in demolition. I got his signature on the divorce papers and revealed the truth as we were leaving. Ah, you'll need to move out of this house soon. Just so you know.
What the hell do you mean?
Well, I built this house.
What? I thought you just renovated your parents' house. Hey, you never mentioned this.
No, you got it wrong.
I wanted to talk about it when we had more trust. But thanks for showing your true colors early.
So, Nancy, you must be making a lot of money, right? You never mentioned a mortgage or anything. I've already paid off the mortgage. We'll talk about the rest later. I want to go and submit these divorce papers now.
If you're making that much, forget the divorce. Give that back.
Robert tried to snatch away the divorce papers, but the burly contractors easily restrained him. Eventually, they took him in their truck to the courthouse. The divorce papers were accepted without issue. The next day, perhaps he had the day off, Robert called several times. Figuring he was curious about work, I answered the phone. Instead of Robert, it was Caroline, though it sounded like Robert was there too since she was on speaker.
Hey! What do you think you're doing? You told my dad to leave, right? Explain yourself.
Oh, morning Caroline. Yes, you need to leave because I bought that house.
What? My dad said you just renovated your family home, so he could easily take it over.
So he said that, huh? Thanks for letting me know.
Caroline. Don't butt in. Tell me, Nancy, how on earth were you making such large payments? Oh, I meant to tell you. I'm an investor, you know. I've been trading stocks for a few years now. I have some friends who tried that, but they never made any money. There's no way someone like you could've. Well, I actually did. My dad's also an investor, a successful one. He lives overseas now.
That explains why we had our wedding meeting via video call.
You got it. There's a pandemic over there right now, so he can't come back to the States.
So, Nancy, were you living off your parents' money? Only at the beginning. Borrowed some but paid it right back. Want to know my total assets?
Don't beat around the bush. I bet it's something like $100,000?
Nope, you're off by a few zeros.
Don't tell me it's $1 million.
Close, it's $9 million.
What?
You missed out on a big catch. Too much for you to handle, I guess. Hold on, you're lying.
Lies. There's no way you're making that kind of money.
If you think I'm lying, that's fine. We won't be seeing each other again.
Wait, Nancy. Let's get back together. Please, come back.
Well then, bye-bye. Saying that, I hung up, blocked his number, and also blocked his messages. Feeling liberated, I started looking for a new place to live. A few days later, a call came from an unknown number. When I answered, it was Robert using the company's cell phone. I didn't know the company's phone number.
Nancy. Please, don't hang up. Listen to me.
What is it? A demolition crew is here. They're telling me to leave my house. Can you help? Where are you right now? We could come over. That ain't happening. Goodbye.
Wait. Mom. It's me, Caroline. I'm sorry for what I said. Please, can we live together again?
Caroline, I'm not your mother anymore. Don't come crawling back now.
It was my fault. Marry Dad again. I won't be able to go to college and my cell phone's gonna get cut off soon. Please, I promise to be good.
Poor thing. But remember, Caroline, it was you who refused when I tried to become your mother. Life's not always a cakewalk, you know? Maybe you should give up on college for now and get a job. Or take out a student loan.
A student loan? No way. My college life as a girl. I just can't.
Throwing a tantrum now won't help. Robert, and you need to figure it out. Take care and goodbye. I blocked that number and headed straight to the phone store to change my number. About 3 months passed. I heard from a gym buddy, who was also close to Robert, that he no longer had any time or money for hobbies. He's working day and night to pay back the money he borrowed from his parents. I thought I saw Caroline downtown when I was out with friends, but they're no longer my concern. They got what they deserved.
When I told my parents about everything, they suggested I live with them. I'm planning to leave states soon, so I probably won't have to deal with those people anymore.
I'm looking forward to new beginnings over there. I've reached my limit. I deeply regretted my grandmother's words. Why didn't I take my grandmother with me back then? Why didn't I try to meet her earlier, even if it meant forcing the issue? I held her frail hand that had become just skin and bones. Not knowing what to do, I reached out to someone. While waiting in the hospital corridor, I got a call from Mary Ann.
Oh, did you get to see Grandma? Why the heck are you asking me like that? What's going on with her? Why has Grandma lost so much weight? Well, idle folks can't expect luxuries like meals. If you don't work, you don't eat, you know.
My grandmother had always worked so hard for us. Certainly harder than Mary Ann, who's always lazing around.
There's something I gotta say. What is it? You're gonna have to take care of that old granny.
With that, Mary Ann hung up. If she felt that way, then I'd take care of her. From then on, I took care of my grandmother with all my might. At first, my grandmother looked sorry for us, but over time she started to recover.
We need to give those idiots a piece of our mind.
My name is Alicia Sutton, a 28-year-old single woman, living at my family home with my grandmother, Josie. I have a brother named Michael and a grandfather who's hospitalized. Our parents passed away in a car accident when I was in middle school.
Don't worry, Alicia and Michael. Your grandparents will always protect you.
With that, my grandmother held me until I stopped crying. I remember my grandfather comforting Michael by patting his back. From then on, we were taken in by our grandparents. Losing their only son and suddenly taking in 2 growing grandchildren must have been tough on them. While I actively helped out my grandparents, Michael, who was in high school at the time, started to clash with grandfather.
I never wanted to come to this rural place in the first place.
It seemed Michael couldn't accept the fact that he had to transfer schools because of the move. That being said, I wouldn't say my grandparents' place is that rural. It's in a regular suburban neighborhood with no transportation issues. However, where we used to live, there were places to hang out nearby, but after moving in with my grandparents, those places became distant. Probably why he wasn't too pleased. Gradually, he'd come home late, even staying out all night during high school, leading to big arguments with my grandfather. When he went off to college, he left home and started ignoring all messages from us. I was planning on going to college too, but just before that, my grandfather had a health scare. Michael took the money that was saved for my college when he left, so my grandfather worked hard trying to earn it back. So, I started working right after high school and took turns with my grandmother caring for my grandfather. My grandmother, having been a housekeeper in the past, took care of all the house chores, which allowed me to focus on my job, making ends meet.
Alicia, don't overdo it. Remember to take care of yourself even when working.
Thanks, but I'm enjoying my job, so I'm okay. The one who helped me was a neighbor, Robert Smith. He became a doctor, but his father is a company CEO. Thanks to Robert's efforts, I got a job in his father's company straight out of high school. Now, I even have a decent position there and owe a lot to Robert.
Alicia, the hospital just called. Your grandpa's condition has suddenly worsened.
One day, my grandfather's health deteriorated and he never woke up again. I asked Michael to come and at least see our grandfather during his final moments or for the funeral, but he didn't even show up, let alone reply. I was furious at Michael, but supporting my grieving grandmother was my priority. Michael finally showed up when we had finished dealing with our grandfather's possessions and things had calmed down emotionally. Hey, long time no see.
Wait, Michael? Is that really you?
Forgot what your brother looks like? That's heartless.
That's rich coming from you, showing up now of all times.
I confronted Michael, but he just brushed it off. Then, from behind him, a flamboyantly dressed woman popped out.
Hello, you must be the dull little sister I've heard about. Excuse me? I'm Mary Ann. Technically, I'm your sister-in-law, but since I'm younger, I'll use polite words with you.
Mary Ann's father is a CEO. She knows her manners. Their rudeness left me completely taken aback. A woman named Mary Ann was apparently Michael's wife. I didn't even know that Michael had gotten married, and I was very surprised to find out she's younger than me. So, what can I do for ya? My grandmother was still feeling down, so she was resting in her room. That's why I decided to talk with Michael in my grandmother's stead. Grandma's resting. She's lost someone dear to her. Whatever, just leave. What? What's he talking about? That's the first thought that crossed my mind. You'll probably never get married anyway. Mary Ann is pregnant.
So, what's that got to do with me?
Grandma might want to take care of her great-grandchild, and we're gonna live here. You being here is a bother, and you might bring bad luck. So, leave. Of course, I argued with Michael for saying such things. But when Michael and his wife started moving their things in and threw mine out, I reluctantly left. There was no way I could stand up to Michael, who was always boastful about his fights.
Don't touch my computer. Got it. But take good care of Grandma. If you promise that, I'll leave quietly.
I was gonna look after her anyway. Otherwise, I wouldn't get this house. All of my grandfather's assets went to my grandmother. The only asset was pretty much this house, so he probably moved in with the intention of getting it. I explained everything to my grandmother, who noticed the commotion, and decided to leave the house with the essentials. I'm sorry, Alicia. I promise to protect you.
Don't worry about it, I'll be okay.
My grandmother has been gentle and strict, while Robert has been the exact opposite. She doesn't like confrontations and tends to agree when pushed too hard. So, driving Michael and his wife out would probably be tough. Still, I left in the heat of the moment. As I was wondering what to do, someone called my name.
Hey, Robert! What's up?
I got a call from Josie. You don't know where you're going, do you? Robert and my grandmother have been close enough to exchange contact details. That's probably why she reached out to him. Even though Robert must have been busy, he came over. I've got things sorted on my end, let's go. I'll carry your bags too. Saying that, I followed behind Robert, who kindly took my luggage. I knew things would be fine if I left them to Robert. What worried me more was leaving my grandmother behind at home. I was so filled with concern and anxiety. After settling down at my new place, I called my grandmother.
Alicia, are you all right? Are you taking care of yourself?
I'm fine, don't worry. But what about you, grandmother? Are you okay? Well, actually. My grandmother hesitated a bit, but then she told me about the situation at home. Apparently, Marianne was using her pregnancy as an excuse to not do any house chores and just lazed around on the couch all day. Sometimes, she even left in the afternoon and didn't come back until nighttime. What's Michael doing? He seems to be working, but he doesn't contribute any money. Moreover, Marianne says that since he can't earn much, I shouldn't complain. It seemed like Michael and Marianne were ganging up and being unfairly critical of my grandmother. By the way, they seemed to be using the savings I had deposited when I lived with them. I'm sorry for using it without asking. It's okay. Use the money in that account as you see fit.
Thank you. I truly am sorry, Alicia. By the way, doing all the household chores at my age is really tough.
Indeed, even though my grandmother can handle housework, she's already 75. When I had lived with her, we used to share chores once I got used to my job, but it seemed Michael and his wife were piling everything onto my grandmother. After ending the call with my grandmother, I called Michael. It seemed to be his lunch break, so Michael answered pretty quickly. What is it?
I heard from grandmother. You're not contributing money and pushing all the housework onto her, especially after we just lost grandfather.
Shut up. We're the ones taking care of her.
You, with no marriage in sight, should just keep quiet.
And with that, Michael hung up. After that, I sent a message on WhatsApp to comfort my grandmother, but he left it unread. I got really irritated by Michael's attitude. How did someone like him come from my kind parents and grandparents? I was still stewing over this when I got a message from Marianne.
Heard from someone that you had issues with the way we do things? Coming from a jobless single woman who just sits at home, huh?
Even over the phone, her condescending tone was clear. Jobless and staying at home? What's she talking about? What are you talking about?
I have a job. You don't have to lie. Your grandmother told me you just sit at home on your computer all day.
Seemed like she mistook my remote working for being jobless. My grandmother knew I was working, I was sure she explained it to her. Yet, Marianne, who's younger than me, didn't seem to get it.
You're just jealous because we took the house you wanted to stay shut in. Just stay quiet, jobless lady.
With that, Marianne hung up. She seemed to have quite a twisted personality. I sighed deeply. From then on, I couldn't get in touch with my grandmother and became increasingly worried.
Alicia, is Josie all right?
Robert suddenly asked me this after days of my growing concern.
Sorry, what are you talking about? About 2 weeks ago, Josie came to our hospital.
Hearing this, I was taken aback and pressed Robert for more details. Apparently, my grandmother had an accident with a bicycle on her way back from shopping and was taken to the hospital. So it just so happened that Robert, who's an orthopedic specialist, was assigned to her case, and the diagnosis was a broken leg. She had to stay in the hospital for a while, and she was just discharged the other day. Only Marianne came to pick her up. Moreover, Marianne was berating the grandmother, so Robert stepped in and intervened, as he told me.
Why didn't you tell me sooner? I'm sorry. Josie asked me not to worry you and to keep it a secret until she was discharged. Also, I did inform your sister-in-law Marianne, but she said you were too busy to come.
I had indeed been busy with work the past few days. So, Robert just took her word for it. I immediately reached out to my grandmother and Michael. However, I couldn't get through to either of them, so reluctantly I called Marianne, who responded with a clearly annoyed tone.
Ugh, it's you again?
Why are you so persistent? I heard grandmother broke her leg.
Oh wow, wonder who spilled the beans. Anyway, why is it any of your business?
Of course, it's my business. I'm gonna visit home soon. I can't deal with you, so I'll ask grandmother directly. Her attitude was, as usual, infuriating. I didn't want to leave grandmother in her care, but Marianne was like, "You can't. If you want to visit her, pay a fee. $100 an hour. If you can't pay, you can't see her." Marianne then hung up. I still went to my childhood home, but she pretended not to be home and turned me away, making it impossible to see my grandmother. My days of worry and frustration changed when I got a rare call from Michael. "Hey, you still living that miserable life of yours?"
That's rude to just say out of the blue. Stop messing around and let me see grandmother.
All right. Go ahead. I was taken aback by how easily he gave permission. I thought he was gonna say I'd never see her again, but Marianne has settled down a bit, so we're gonna take a trip.
What?
We're leaving that old lady, your grandmother, to you. Oh, and when you get to the house, make sure to clean up, okay? Thanks for the cash, by the way. Michael said and hung up. His talk about money and cleaning was confusing, but what surprised me more was them going on a trip and leaving my grandmother with a broken leg behind. I quickly headed to my childhood home.
Grandma!
The home was nothing like the tidy place my grandmother used to keep, it was a mess. I searched for my grandmother, trying not to let the mess bother me. Alicia.
Grandma!
I found my grandmother in a cramped room that had become a storage space. My grandmother was barely laid out on a mattress in there. I rushed over immediately. "I've reached my limit." Hearing my grandmother say this, I was filled with immense regret. Why didn't I take my grandmother with me back then? Why didn't I forcefully try to see her sooner? I held her frail, bony hand. Not knowing what to do, I reached out to someone for help.
Alicia! Josie!
Robert came over as soon as I called for help. He gave my grandmother a quick examination and administered first aid. As we were doing that, an ambulance arrived and took my grandmother.
Thank you for coming. But how did you get here faster than the ambulance?
I was already in the area because I was worried about her. Robert always comforted me when I was overwhelmed with anxiety. He was waiting with me as my grandmother was being treated. While waiting in the hospital corridor, I received a call from Marianne.
"Oh, did you get to see Grandma? Why the heck are you asking me like that? What's going on with her? Why has Grandma lost so much weight?"
"Well, idle folks can't expect luxuries like meal. If you don't work, you don't eat, you know." My grandmother has worked hard all her life. Certainly more than Marianne, who mostly just lounged around.
"There's something else I wanted to tell you." "What is it?" "I'm leaving Granny with you."
Marianne hung up after saying that.
"If that's what she wants, I'll take care of her."
Robert nodded in agreement with my statement. After that, I took my grandmother in and cared for her with all my might.
"If you need anything, just let me know."
In fact, after being kicked out of my parents' house, I had been staying with Robert. Whenever I tried to leave, Robert would stop me. Given my mental instability, we kind of ended up living together like a couple. He even agreed to take in my grandmother, and he's been helping with her care from then on. Initially, my grandmother seemed to feel guilty towards us, but gradually she started to recover remarkably.
"I need to give a piece of my mind to those damn fools."
She'd say that, working hard at her physical therapy so she might be able to move on soon. "I've put you through so much, Robert, looking after Grandma and all."
"Don't worry about it. For the woman I love and someone who's done so much for me, it's actually a pleasure."
Actually, Robert had been trying to get closer to me for a while. I liked him too, but with my grandmother needing care, I kept a little distance from him. Just when I was finally ready to give him an answer, Michael and his crew showed up, so I still haven't given my response. It's turned out, Robert's parents are a busy CEO and lawyer, and when he was younger, a nearby grandmother used to take care of him. So he's helping out as a way to repay that kindness.
"Hey, the house is still a mess."
I was pointed out about a month after taking in my grandmother when Michael finally reached out. He seemed to have been on a pretty long vacation, which was surprising.
"I told you to handle it, didn't I?"
"I never said I'd do it." Besides, you think you can just leisurely contact me without any repercussions? What do you mean? Aren't you getting calls from the company? I could tell from the other end of the phone that Michael was taken aback. I couldn't help but laugh at his reaction. Why are you so shocked? I let Michael in on a little secret.
You know one of the big companies your firm deals with? That's where I work. And I happen to be good friends with the CEO. When I told him about this, he was furious and said he'd end the business relationship if he has an employee like you.
Michael let out an almost inaudible scream. This deal was crucial for the future of Michael's company. If it's called off, the loss would be immense, and it's unimaginable what kind of repercussions Michael would face.
Why on earth are you close with the CEO?
Simple. I'm the next in line to become CEO. While Robert chose a path in medicine, I was expected to take on the leadership role in the future. The company president and his wife have always shown me kindness, treating me as if I were their own daughter. I've heard everything from Grandma. Marianne took away Grandma's phone so she couldn't contact anyone, and Marianne took the money I sent home to use for her trip. I'll never forgive you too. Bye. With that, I hung up the phone. I blocked all their contact information. Finally, letting out all the pent-up frustration felt so refreshing. I thought things would be peaceful for a while, but that wasn't the case.
Alicia!
Ugh, why are you here? As I left the office, Michael and Marianne were waiting for me. The two approached me quickly with grim expressions.
We've been through hell because of you.
And without waiting for a response, they started complaining. Apparently, due to this situation, Michael was heavily reprimanded by Marianne's father, who is the company president. Furthermore, in front of other employees, he was loudly blamed for occupying the home and for the issues with Grandma. Word spread throughout the company, and he was looked down upon by everyone. Given that Marianne's father is a sensible man and because Michael, assuming he'd be the next company president, had a terrible work attitude, he got fired.
You got what you deserve, right? Stop joking around!
By the way, the reason they occupied the home was for Michael to join Marianne's father's company. They wanted to move here, but they didn't want to live in the strict house of Marianne's father. They figured our home was spacious enough, and they wouldn't need to spend money buying a new place.
But because of you, we got kicked out of that house.
The house was still under my grandmother's name. And in her anger over this whole situation, during Michael and Marianne's trip, Grandma sold the house. As a result, the two of them lost both their job and home almost immediately upon returning from the vacation.
So, what do you want from me? It's your fault, so help us out. Yeah, because of you, Dad's mad at us.
Listening to the two of them whining for help was overwhelming. Do these two have no shame?
You two sure are selfish.
Oh, hey Robert, good day. Alicia, thank you for all your hard work. Just then, Robert came along with my grandmother. Ever since the incident, my grandmother's recovered and been able to move around on her own if she was in a wheelchair. The look on my grandmother's face was pure anger.
This dumb grandson of mine. You better not cause any more trouble for Alicia.
Thanks to her surge of anger, my grandmother stood up and grabbed Michael by the collar. My grandmother has always been kind-hearted, but when angered, she's scarier than anyone else. Michael knew this all too well, so he let out a slight scream.
You're no grandson of mine. I cut ties with you. Grandma.
Oh, same here.
I don't want to think of you as my brother anymore. So I'm cutting ties with you right here and now. And I'm definitely not gonna help you guys out.
At my words, Michael and his wife went pale.
Oh, there's something important you both need to know.
Robert helped my grandmother back into her wheelchair and gave a big, genuine smile. He was clearly upset about what happened, so Michael and his wife were probably in deep trouble.
My dad's the CEO of this company, and my mom's a lawyer. They looked into you too after what happened. And during that, they found something out about you, Marianne.
At Robert's words, Marianne shuddered. And Michael gave a puzzled look. That baby you're carrying, it's not Michael's, is it? It's from your affair, right? Well. She was stammering. And I could tell Michael was taken aback.
What the hell is going on? Shut up. Did you really think I was serious about an old guy like you?
Despite being in a public place, the two started to argue loudly. We just called the police and then left. A few minutes later, the couple was taken away by the police. Later, one of Robert's mom's colleagues sued the couple. They were taken in by the police and eventually charged with neglect. Marianne's father, a CEO on the other end, sincerely apologized for the trouble his daughter had caused. He promised not to abandon the two, so business dealings resumed. These two will surely face hell even after they're released. Several apology letters came to my grandmother and me from Michael, but we just read and tossed them away. My grandmother had burned letters from him several times without even reading them. Yet, it seems Michael had divorced Marianne. Marianne's child has apparently taken in by some wealthy couple in New York. Since they claimed they'd raised the child properly without spoiling him, we decided to leave it in their hands for now.
I have gifts for Alicia and Josie.
The family estate that was on sale was bought by Robert. Thanks to Robert, the house filled with memories with my grandfather was saved. Furthermore, Robert decided to live in that house with my grandmother.
Robert really saved us. I just returned the favor. Besides, I wanted to be happy with Alicia.
After that, I married Robert. We had been dating for only 6 months, but considering the long wait, it was quite fast. Still, we were very happy. Furthermore, I was promoted in my company, and I am now officially being trained under my father-in-law as the next CEO. Seeing me in my bridal attire, my grandmother seemed reinvigorated with the hope of seeing her great-grandchild and eventually started walking with a cane.
What's up? Well, since I live in this house, I thought Michael and Marianne would come.
Oh, my parents took care of that. Apparently, Michael tried to get in touch with us, but was taken somewhere by the employees who adore me under my in-laws. As for Marianne, she couldn't return home, couldn't meet her child, disappeared into the nightlife of New York, and her whereabouts remain unknown. Later on, I gave birth to a lovely son. The news set both my grandmother and my in-laws into a frenzy of excitement. The future of this boy is still uncertain, but I hope he grows up to be a kind man like Robert and not a troublemaker like Michael.
I am so blessed and happy.
I genuinely smiled during those happy times. Robert too had a contented look on his face. When he grows up a bit more, we should all go to somewhere for a vacation.
If you say that, Grandma might get so excited she might start running again.
Saying so, the time we spend laughing together is truly precious.
It's been a while. Kathy, how've you been? Guess what? My husband and I had a beautiful baby. She looks just like me and Jake, so cute. Why don't you come over to our place? I mean, I bet you're envious. The message from Moira was filled with malicious comments. Reluctantly, when I went over to Moira's house, she said, "Isn't the baby cute? Feeling a bit jealous, aren't you? You're still single, right? Still hung up on Jake, maybe? Well, even if you are, I'd never let him go, just so you know." I was bombarded with her mean comments and felt uncomfortable staying there any longer. My name's Kathy, 29 years old. I live with my husband and our 2-year-old son. My husband, Michael, is my boss at work, and we got married 3 years ago. Every day spent with my husband and son is truly a joy and a blessing. Hey, Kathy, wanna go to the amusement park this Sunday? Oh, sure, that sounds nice. I'd love to ride the Ferris wheel, it's been a while. Sounds fun. Well, I'm off to work now. Thanks for working hard every day. Take care. Will do. That's how our mornings usually go, with me seeing him off to work. Every day might seem ordinary, but it's these moments that I cherish. I love cooking and traveling, and I especially love taking photos. Recently, I've been sharing my photos on social media, and it's fun interacting with everyone there. I have a decent number of followers on my account, and I enjoy the likes and comments I receive. Everything was going smoothly until something unexpected happened. It all started with a message on my phone. Oh, I've got a notification. Who's it from? I initially thought it was another social media notification, but it turned out to be a message from Moira, an old friend of mine. It's been a while. Kathy, how've you been? Guess what? My husband and I had a beautiful baby. She looks just like me and Jake, so cute. I finally understand what people mean when they say you're the apple of my eye. Why don't you come over to our place? I mean, I bet you're envious. The message from Moira was filled with malicious comments. Moira and I went to the same school from elementary through high school. We had been in the same class multiple times and were very close friends. We remained close even after graduating and entering the workforce. To me, Moira was my best friend. However, an incident drove a wedge between us, and we eventually lost touch. This happened a few years ago. Shortly after graduating from high school and starting my job, I was invited to a group date where I met Jake. We hit it off and began dating. About a year or so later, Jake proposed to me. I accepted on the spot. That evening, I introduced Jake to Moira at a local bar. Hi there, I'm Jake. I'm gonna marry Kathy. Nice to meet you. I'm Kathy's best friend, Moira. Congrats on the engagement. Kathy's a great gal. Please take good care of her. Moira warmly congratulated us on our engagement. Kathy's always been a kind-hearted and popular person in school. I'm lucky to have a wonderful friend like her. That night, we shared stories from our school days and about our relationship, enjoying our time together. Little did I know, this meeting would lead to the biggest mistake of my life. About a month after I introduced Moira to Jake, I got off at a station a bit away from my office due to work. Just as I was leaving the ticket gates to head to my office, I saw something shocking. Across the street, Jake was walking arm in arm with a woman. I had to do a double take. Because Jake had taken the day off, saying he was going back to his hometown in Nebraska. I couldn't believe he'd be in a place like this. Having some extra time, I decided to take a detour to get a closer look. And indeed, it was Jake. What's more, he was cheerfully walking arm in arm with that woman. Oh, come on, Jake. Betraying me? And who's that woman with you? Who is she? I muttered to myself. Her sun had obscured her face, making it hard to see. But something about her walk and style felt familiar. Then she lifted her sun hat to wipe the sweat from her brow. Is that Moira? Wait, what's going on? I was completely lost. Why were these two walking arm in arm, looking so chummy? It meant Jake had been lying to see Moira. To anyone who didn't know them, they'd look like a young couple in love. I began to wonder if Jake was cheating on me. Come to think of it, lately, our conversations had been few and far between. I was determined to confront them about their relationship. That's when Moira noticed me staring. She started to approach with Jake in tow. Well, if it isn't Kathy. What a surprise bumping into you here. Did we shock you? What are you talking about? You're not surprised? Don't you want to know why we're together? Moira teased with a smug tone. All right, I'll spill the beans. We're dating. In that moment, my mind went blank. Kathy, are you okay? Were you surprised? Moira said, smirking. I was overwhelmed with emotion. Turning my gaze to Jake, I asked. Jake, what the heck is going on? Explain yourself. Sorry, Kathy. I've fallen for Moira. So I've decided to break up with you. My bad. Hey, you can't just decide that on your own. As I spoke up, Jake and Moira started chatting with big smiles. I'm really sorry. But I'll make sure to pay alimony, so don't worry. I'll chip in too. Money is important, you know. And then Moira began to speak, and what she said was quite surprising. Jake and I are going to visit both our families now to introduce ourselves as a couple planning to get married. So, maybe the next time we see each other will be at our wedding. See you later." Saying this, they both left, waving their hands. Just when I thought I was about to get married, Kathy, who I considered my best friend, stole my significant other. And I never imagined they were already at the stage of visiting each other's families. Feeling like I'd hit rock bottom, I headed to the office for work. That day, I wasn't in the mood to be productive at all. A few days later, I received a compensation check from the two of them in my bank account. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and other emotions. I continued to have days when I lost my appetite or didn't feel like going to work. I couldn't get over it. Tears would suddenly flow, and I'd mumble to myself in a low voice. My mom, worried about my state, said, "Honey, you've been acting strange. You left the laundry out all day yesterday, and you've been buying the same groceries we already have in the fridge. You never used to do this. Forget about Jake. You'll find someone else." My mom tried to comfort me. But my sadness wasn't about not being able to forget Jake. I couldn't forgive Moira, whom I considered my best friend, for taking my fiancé away. As I was reminiscing about that distant past, I heard a voice from the entrance. "I'm home, babe." "Oh, welcome back. Sorry, I was lost in thought. You seem upset. What happened?" The one who came back was my current husband, Ted. Ted knew about my past. So, I hesitated to bring up something from so many years ago. We decided no secrets when we got married, remember? "If something's bothering you, tell me." Ted said that, so I decided to tell him the truth. "Moira reached out. She invited me over because they had a baby. It's not that I don't want to meet their child. I know her, she's probably going to brag a lot. To be honest, I don't want to see them ever again. I'm torn about going." To my surprise, Ted had an unexpected reaction. "Why hesitate? They invited us, so let's go together." "Ted, are you serious?" "Of course, I am. That woman not only bullied my beloved Kathy in the past but is still after her even after all these years. We need to talk to them about this. If not, this might continue. Don't you think so, Kathy?"
Yeah.
"You're right. I've always thought that someday I'd have to explain our situation. Now's the chance to set things straight. Let's show them how happy we are now. They'll be so shocked they might fall over." Ted seemed quite excited as he said this. A few days later, I told Moira that we would visit. And the day came when we, as a couple, visited Moira's house. Ted suddenly needed to use the restroom as we approached her place, so he stopped at a nearby convenience store, saying it wouldn't be good to go straight into their home for that. I went ahead to Moira's house and rang the doorbell. "Oh, Kathy, long time no see. It's been a while. Here, have this." I handed her a popular bread I had at home. "Oh, the trendy bread, huh? I thought you only ate simple, cheap stuff." "You bought this especially for coming here." "Thanks. Jake and I will enjoy it together." Moira's words had a hint of sarcasm, but I shot back. "No, it's not like that. I had plenty at home, so I just brought some." "Oh, I see. You're still single, right? You must have a lot of free time. I'm kind of envious." Moira continued with her snide remarks. Apparently, she thought I was still single. Then Jake chimed in. "Come on, don't be so blunt. You're making it hard for Kathy to respond." He grinned slightly at Moira. I was honestly annoyed by their condescending attitude. All I wanted at that moment was to see their baby and leave. "Where's the baby?" "Oh, right. We invited you for that. Isn't our daughter adorable?" Jake and Moira, being a good-looking couple, naturally had a very cute baby. Although the baby was only a few months old and their features weren't fully developed, I could sense they took after both Jake and Moira. In my heart, I whispered, cute babies are just that. Cute. The baby is innocent. I hoped the baby wouldn't inherit their personalities. The baby's cute, isn't she? So, are you jealous? You're still single, aren't you, Kathy? Maybe you still have feelings for Jake? Even if you do, I'm never gonna let him go. I've been checking out your social media, and it seems kinda lonely. You're posting photos from various places for likes, but it just looks like you're enjoying it alone. Doesn't really seem interesting. And your meals, it's always just for one, right? Maybe you're waiting for DMs from guys? If so, that's super creepy. I thought to myself, if she feels that way, she shouldn't be looking in the first place. But Moira kept going with her sarcastic remarks. I've seen photos of foreign landscapes and night pools. You just got them from the internet and reposted them, right? And all those fancy meals, you're just showing off the stress of places you can't actually go to. It's unpleasant for people to see a social media full of your wishes. You should be careful about copyright. Yes, I just gave good advice. You should be grateful. Hey, lay off a bit. You're being too harsh on Kathy, said Jake, with a clearly unsympathetic expression. I decided to tell the truth. Actually, my husband's here with me. Sorry for the surprise. Their expressions changed instantly. Wait, Kathy, you got married? Well, is it that surprising? A lot of time has passed. I don't think it's that weird. Upon hearing this, Moira seemed taken aback. I knew it. You must have felt lonely living by yourself, Kathy. So, you desperately searched for a man. Probably settled for someone not so great. I get that you might be upset about Jake being with me. The main reason Moira took Jake from me was his high income. He was handsome and tall, well-educated and from a wealthy family. And of course, a high salary to top it all off. Little did Moira know, she was about to get a big surprise. Ted, you can come in now. My husband, who had stopped by the convenience store, came in through the door. Sorry for being late. I'm Ted, Kathy's husband. And this is our son. Nice to meet you. Ted entered with a big smile, while our son looked a bit shy. The key players, Moira and Jake, were pale as ghosts. No way! Isn't this the famous? Their expressions changed dramatically. I tried hard not to laugh. Isn't this Ted, the chef from the 3-star restaurant, Scorching Diner? Why is he here? This has gotta be a joke. Dude, is this real? This isn't a dream, right? Sadly for them, it was not a dream. My husband, Ted, runs a restaurant in New York, known by those in the know as a top chef. Recently, he's been on TV and various online platforms. Knowing the truth about him left them both shaken. Naturally, they bombarded us with questions. So, how did you two meet? I just happened to go to his restaurant. We just clicked. Jake then chimed in. Hey, I've been to that place. It was amazing. And the bread you brought, is it from Ted? Yes, it is. My parents sent them to us. They mistakenly sent too many, so we brought them here. Please enjoy. It's really good. Ted continued without being flustered by their shock. Those dishes you posted on your social media, are they? Yes, they're real. I taught Kathy how to make them, and she often cooks and posts them. Even though I'm a chef, the real home-cooked taste comes from Kathy. Isn't that right, dear? Feeling a bit shy, I added. That's right. Those dishes are my own creations. They might not be as impressive as Ted's, but I love when he enjoys my cooking with a big smile. Upon hearing this, Ted's face turned red. So, you're not just single, you're super blessed, huh? Moira said with a hint of jealousy. Suddenly, Ted's demeanor changed, and he looked upset. The reason we came here today is that I have something to say to both of you. You bullied my precious wife in the past, right? Moira started to get nervous. And now you think you can show off just because you have a child? I can't even find the words. And you thought Kathy was single all this time? Even though you were close to getting married, you thought a settlement would be enough? That's... Jake was also sweating profusely. Why on earth did you bring Kathy here? After all these years, you're still trying to hurt her, aren't you? There's no way I'd do something like that. Ted raised his voice even more and began addressing Jake. Jake, I can't trust someone like you who can easily hurt someone else's wife. Before coming here, I did some digging. Turns out, the CEO and executives, you know, the top brass of your company, are regulars at my place. Just the other day, they were having a drink and talking about how tough their job has been. I mean, with an employee like you, it's no wonder they're drinking their stress away. And about yesterday, I casually asked them, do you know a guy named Jake? And guess what? They all nodded. Seems like you're pretty infamous for being incompetent. I made sure to chat about you. Well, I bet you're looking forward to work tomorrow, huh? Ted smirked as he spoke, and Jake looked terrified. I never thought Ted would go this far. But I was touched thinking that he was genuinely concerned about me. Suddenly, Moira turned on Jake with a raised voice. Wait, Jake, you're that incompetent? What are you gonna do if you get demoted? We have a kid, and expenses are only gonna go up. Think before you act. Excuse me? Why are you suddenly calling me incompetent? It's all your fault. Always nagging at me. I'm stressed out. How am I supposed to be passionate about work? Tell me. Before we knew it, Moira and Jake were in a full-blown argument. Let's head out, I suggested. Yes, let's go, Ted agreed. Ted, our son, and I left Moira's place. Apparently, Jake got an earful from his bosses at work. His chances of a promotion are probably slim now. To make matters worse, they had just bought a luxury apartment. They were happy to move in, but with Jake facing a possible demotion, they clearly couldn't afford it. Jake had to ask Moira's parents for financial help. They ended up selling the apartment, but they didn't get the price they hoped for. The loan is still outstanding, and now Moira is working multiple part-time jobs, busting her chops. Meanwhile, Ted was set to go to France. You're going to France? Yeah, I had plans to go a few years ago, but times were tough. How long are you gonna be away? About a year. I'm looking to further my career and come back even better. Take care. Don't get involved with any strange women over there. Jokingly, I said that and Ted burst out laughing. What are you talking about? You and the kid are coming with me. We've already got everything set. My eyes widened in surprise. You're kidding, right? Nope. We're gonna give it our all together over there. In that moment, I was truly grateful to have met Ted. It's unlikely we'll have anything to do with those two again. The weight that had been on my heart was lifted, and I looked forward to a brighter future.
Why don't you live with us, Mom? I bet it'd be fun for you too. What's your problem with that? I know all too well why he suddenly brought up the idea of living together and what he's really after. I also know their eyes are always on my bedroom. The place we're in now is just too cramped. Can't you just look after Susie for us at least? When my granddaughter was treated like an object, something inside of me snapped. My name is Catherine Wilson. I'm turning 74 this year. 3 years ago, my husband, whom I had been with for many years, passed away, and I now live alone. The house is too big for just me, but it's filled with memories of my family, and I hold it dear. I've been thinking about selling it and moving into a condo, but I haven't made up my mind yet. My son, who moved out long ago, has his own family. When his daughter was younger, they'd frequently visit, but not so often now. My husband and my son never really got along. My son always found my husband, who was strict and couldn't stand dishonesty, to be a pain. After seeing each other at my husband's funeral 3 years ago, they haven't reached out regularly. Yet, the reason I can still live so vividly is because I volunteer at places where one of my friends recommended me. Thanks to an old friend's recommendation, I volunteer at a private high school, teaching floral arrangement and the art of afternoon tea. Not only was I happy that my skills were being put to use, but interacting with the students pulled me out of the depths of loneliness. I'm so grateful to the friend who got me out of my shell after losing my husband. One day, I came home and noticed a missed call on my smartphone. Displayed on the tiny screen was a familiar number. My son, Bob, is a 47-year-old employee at a company. It's rare for him to call me during the day. I quickly called back, curious if something had happened, and he picked up right away. Even though we hadn't been in touch so often now, a call from my only son made me elated as always. Due to an upcoming transfer, Bob's gonna move away from his current job and apparently move closer to my place. "I'd like to catch up, it's been a while," he said. I was thrilled and quickly replied. He's gonna bring his wife, Lucy, and their daughter, Susie, along. A few days later, when my eldest son and his family showed up at my place, they looked a tad tense at the entrance. "Sorry for coming over unannounced, Mom. Everything's been a whirlwind on our end. But we wanted to let you know." Brief greetings aside, I invited my son and his family, who had traveled a long way, inside. Lucy exchanged an awkward hug with me, and Susie, hiding behind my son's back, gave me a slight smile. Though Lucy's behavior might have some reasons, Susie should have been used to being so attached to me from when she was little. Seeing my beloved granddaughter acting so shy with me made me feel a bit lonely. There was an awkward tension in the air, but there might have been changes in her mind since she lost her grandfather 3 years ago. In the living room, Bob and his family promptly started enjoying the tea and snacks that were served. The reason for Bob's move was a job transfer, forcing him to leave his company-provided housing. Starting with tales of his struggles at work, Bob went on to rant about the sudden transfer. Throughout his tales, Lucy and Susie remained silent. "I'm sorry I couldn't visit you more often," Bob said with a serious look on his face. "Ever since Dad passed away, I've been worried about how you've been doing all alone. Let's keep in touch like we used to." I was genuinely pleased with my son's offer. While my volunteer activities kept loneliness at bay, it didn't completely eliminate my everyday concerns. Even though I'm still healthy and active now, there might come a time when I'd need assistance. Aging comes with its inevitable decline, and no one is exempt from illness or accidents. However, there was something slightly off about my son's words that niggled at me. From the time my granddaughter was born until she started going kindergarten, Bob and his family lived in this area. Back then, Bob and his wife left little Susie in my care while they lived their lives as they pleased. I adore Susie, treating her as if she were the apple of my eye. It wasn't that I minded taking care of my granddaughter. Due to the whims of Bob and his wife, I was worried about my grandchild who was often left at my place for extended periods or taken here and there. I wonder if Susie feels loneliness again due to the recent move. Seeing Susie's downcast face, just as I was about to say something, Bob interrupted me. "Now that we're no longer in company housing, our rent and living expenses have shot up. When they were in company housing, they apparently didn't need to pay much rent, and utilities were covered by the company. Given the move during summer rates high, the expenses for moving must have been significant." What Bob approached me about was asking for a bit of financial help with living expenses. The issue was the amount. When he mentioned he needed about $2,000 a month, totaling $6,000, I was genuinely taken aback. Could a simple job transfer really require so much money? It felt suspicious, but it was hard to pry for more details in front of the grandchildren. Bob kept saying if he could get help for just the first 3 months, he'd figure something out after that. He seemed genuinely sorry. Seeing both Bob and I fall silent, Susie cast a troubled look and looked down.
Well, if there's anything I can do, I'll help.
Seeing my granddaughter adjusting to a new living environment and looking lost, I said that in response. If my husband were still alive, he might have told Bob.
You should stand on your own.
However, knowing that Bob and his family had no one else to turn to, I couldn't push them away. When Lucy married Bob, she was strongly opposed by her parents due to their religious differences, and they've been estranged ever since. Since they can't rely on her folks, I'm their only hope. Realizing they'd get financial support from me for a while, Bob left with his wife and daughter to their apartment. Susie kept glancing my way till the end, but was soon out of sight, pushed gently by Bob. From that day on, Bob and his family began to frequently barge into my house. I rationalized it as just being financial assistance for 3 months. However, to save on groceries and utilities, they often stayed overnight, which soon became a concern. They would eat everything in the fridge without hesitation, so not just the food costs, but even the effort of shopping increased. Yet, Bob and his wife never offered to help with the shopping. While Bob was working and Susie was attending high school, Lucy wasn't currently employed. If things were tough, she could get a part-time job or something. I sometimes felt like asking her,
"What do you do all day?"
But whenever I tried to address it, Bob would subtly defend her. I knew Bob was deeply in love with his wife, Lucy, who's 10 years younger, so I couldn't openly confront them. I'd remind myself not to interfere in another family's matters and took care of Bob and his family in the beginning. However, it wasn't just meals, but they'd also ask for pocket money and groceries, and it became routine. That wasn't my only concern. I noticed that Susie always looked sad and hardly ever talked. She should be enjoying her high school days the most, but I felt no vigor from her. She wouldn't join in on her parents' conversations, and even when I tried to initiate a chat, she'd just give a faint smile. Especially when I asked about her school life, she'd look like she was about to cry and shake her head. Oblivious to her feelings, Bob and Lucy would drink and laugh as they pleased. My distrust towards Bob's family grew over time. Claiming to go to the bathroom, Susie left the living room. I discreetly followed her. Instead of the bathroom, Susie entered my room upstairs. What I witnessed there was my granddaughter frantically rummaging through the drawers with a distressed look. It was clear as day that she was searching for valuables like bank books, checkbooks, and cash. I was so shocked that I was at a loss for words. Trying to stay calm, I waited in the hallway leading to the living room, hoping for Susie to come back.
"Grandma?"
Realizing I had seen her going through the drawers, Susie bit her lip hard. She hadn't taken anything this time, but she was obviously after something valuable. However, I couldn't bring myself to scold her and instead kept my thoughts to myself. She isn't the type to do such things.
"Susie, are you in some kind of trouble? If there's something you can't tell your parents, why don't you talk to Grandma?"
Speaking softly so Bob and the others wouldn't hear, Susie, shaking her shoulders slightly, slowly turned around. She seemed hesitant to answer. Almost as if she had been forbidden to talk to me.
"There must be things you can't tell your parents. Grandma's always worried about you, Susie."
After a moment of hesitation, pushed by my insistence, Susie slowly began to speak.
"Yeah, well, in high school."
Just then, Bob appeared in the hallway.
"We gotta go home, it's getting late."
"Your mom's ready to leave now."
"Got it."
The living room light was behind him, so I couldn't make out Bob's expression. Susie quickly looked away and headed to the living room to get her things. I silently watched as the three hurriedly left my home. From the other side of the nearly closed door, I was taken aback when I heard Bob raising his voice at Susie from the other side of the door. I could distinctly hear,
"You know what happens if you say unnecessary stuff to Grandma, right?
Bob and his family are hiding something from me." Disturbed by the events, I confided in a close friend. Although I felt bad for airing my family's dirty laundry, I briefly explained the situation. After listening, my friend was certain that Bob's family was acting strangely.
The one I'm most concerned about is your granddaughter, Susie,"
she said, and I had no words in response. From then on, I started consulting her about the issues with Bob's family. When my eldest son's family moved in, the peaceful life I had been living changed dramatically. Bob, who never mentioned living together when my husband was alive, suddenly said he wanted to move in with me. Bob and his wife both pleaded with me, asking if they could stay in my house. Ever since they moved in, I've been continuously drained of money. I had initially promised to help them out for 3 months, yet here they are, still lingering in my home. There were other burdens piling up, making it hard for me to give a positive answer. Seeing my hesitation, Bob visibly sighed in disappointment. "It'd be fun for you too, Mom, if we lived together." "What's the issue?" I wanted to retort.
"The fun's probably just for you,"
but held back. Since they started imposing on me, I've been overwhelmed with chores and shopping, wearing me out mentally and physically. I've been so distracted I can't even focus on my volunteer work at the local school. Even the students have expressed their concern. If we live together, how much will I end up working for my son's family? The thought alone terrifies me. When Bob realized I wasn't going to give a favorable response, he clicked his tongue in annoyance and pointed to Susie.
"Our current place is just too cramped. Can't you at least take care of Susie here?" "Hold on, Dad. We shouldn't burden Grandma like that."
However, Lucy chimed in, agreeing with Bob's suggestion. Susie resisted till the very end, but ultimately, she couldn't go against her parents' wishes. Almost forcibly leaving Susie at my place, Bob and his wife held hands and headed back to their own home. This is just like when Susie was little, isn't it? Always doing as they please, and just using Susie for their own convenience. Days later, when I saw the limited belongings of Susie they'd sent over, I was livid. Honestly, I want to sever ties with Bob and his wife. But doing so would leave Susie without a place. And so, my life living with my granddaughter began. Unlike Bob and his wife, Susie often helped around the house and never asked for an allowance. Strangely enough, since Susie came, Bob and his wife hardly ever barged into my house. Thanks to that, my burdens lightened considerably. The only concern was that Susie often seemed down. Other than that, life with my lovely granddaughter was delightful. Susie, as gentle and sincere as ever, would help with the chores even when coming home late. But, a single remark from a friend I met after a long time plunged me into despair.
"Is your granddaughter attending school regularly? I often see her around here during the day."
"Huh?" It seems my friend has spotted Susie wandering around this neighborhood during the daytime on several occasions. Susie seemed aimless, often going in and out of parks and libraries. My friend even mentioned seeing her enter my house during the hours when I was volunteering at the high school. I couldn't confidently say that Susie was indeed going to school regularly. When she came home late at night, she always looked exhausted and didn't seem to be enjoying her school life. A part of me felt guilty for doubting Susie. But I couldn't ignore it. Without telling her my detailed plans, I left the house and decided to come home at an unusual hour to observe what Susie was up to. As I quietly approached my room, sure enough, there was Susie in her school uniform, rummaging through drawers and cabinets, pulling out checkbooks and bankbooks.
"Susie, can't you just tell me what's going on?"
Caught off guard by my voice, Susie froze on the spot, clutching the checkbook and bankbooks. After a few moments of silent staring, she began to sob. Words to beg for forgiveness poured out of her mouth time and time again.
"I don't mean to blame you,"
I said as I hugged her, and Susie tearfully spilled everything. It all began a few months ago. It turned out that Bob and his family had to look for a new place to live. But it wasn't a job transfer that forced them out of their company-provided house. Bob had caused significant trouble at work and was forced to resign, and consequently, they were evicted from the company housing. The financially strapped Bob and his wife, with Susie in tow, apparently decided to move, relying on my assets and support. Bob has been living off my money, all the while hiding the fact that he's unemployed. But there's more. Shockingly, Bob and his wife had been using Susie to steal small amounts of cash from my home. I had noticed recently that the cash I'd stored deep in a drawer was missing. I knew it was Susie's doing, but I chose to turn a blind eye. I never imagined she was doing it under her parents' coercion. Bob would forcibly convince a reluctant Susie and order her repeatedly to steal cash. He probably thought that if it's Susie, whom I adore, she wouldn't get into trouble even if she rummaged through stuff at home. Still, kind-hearted and sincere Susie fiercely resisted her parents, knowing that stealing was wrong. When Susie defied them, Bob and his wife threatened her.
If you don't do as told, we'll make you drop out of high school right now.
Being told they wouldn't be able to send her to high school without money, Susie had no choice but to comply tearfully.
But I really didn't want to steal from you, Grandma. That's why I secretly started working.
That was her only allowed act of rebellion. But the hard-earned money she made was never used for living expenses, plunging Susie into deep despair. Susie's high school had a rule against part-time jobs, and she was confronted by her teacher when they found out. Just add insult to injury. To add to breaking school rules, rumors spread about her mother as a sloppy woman going frequently to bars, making Susie feel out of place at school. She tearfully told me she hasn't been attending school at all lately.
I'd rather go to jail at this rate. Grandma, please call the police. I don't want to go back to that house.
Once cash wasn't enough for her parents, they instructed her to steal the checkbooks and bank books. They must have proposed living together and left Susie here to watch for an opportunity to steal my assets. Hearing such shocking words from my high school-aged granddaughter made my mind go blank. The thought that jail might be better than returning to her parents' home. I hugged the sobbing Susie, wondering why she had to endure so much. Something snapped inside me. The intense hatred that sprouted in my heart was directed at Bob and his wife. On behalf of my granddaughter, who was repeatedly begging for forgiveness with a trembling voice, I was determined to get revenge on the two. A few days later, Susie confided everything to me. Bob and his wife again contacted me, suggesting we live together. Since Susie stopped taking cash from my house, they probably thought they had to steal it themselves. Just before my husband passed away, he left inheritance money for both me and Bob. However, Bob had already spent his share long ago. Realizing that the untouched inheritance was still in my house, Bob was no doubt eyeing that money greedily. The last time Bob visited, he nonchalantly asked me where the inheritance was kept. "It's just that scams are so common these days and I'm worried," he said, trying to sound concerned. Aware of Bob's intentions, I, of course, didn't reveal the location of the inheritance. Perhaps angered by my refusal to reveal the location of the inheritance, Bob set his sights on Susie next. He shockingly threatened me using Susie, saying, "If I can't get the money, I might have to pull her out of high school. I'm just asking for a small loan from Dad's inheritance. It's not like I want to take it, right? If that's not possible, could you at least pay for the rent and living expenses?" Bob, no longer trying to hide his true motives, bluntly demanded the money. Susie, who had been listening to our conversation, looked down with tears in her eyes. I was internally flabbergasted, wondering where I went wrong in raising him. Reluctantly, I agreed to let them move in. I had no intention of giving in to their demands, but I had no choice if I wanted to expose their wrongdoing.
Grandma, what should we do? At this rate, they might take everything from us.
Susie, in a panicked tone, tried to hold me back, but there was no turning back.
There's nothing to worry about. All you have to do is pretend you don't know anything and watch over them.
Everything was going according to plan. If they thought I would let them into my house without any strategy, they were sorely mistaken. One quiet afternoon. Not long after I started living with Bob and his wife, a loud alarm would sound in my house. I received a call that someone was trying to break into my room, so I rushed home from school. Even without seeing the face, it was clear who had broken in. A security officer had apprehended the intruder. I sighed when I saw Bob, who was looking flustered. Lucy had a pale face and seemed unable to do anything but stare at Bob. It seemed she had been posted outside the room to keep watch.
How did you do this with your tech illiteracy?
Pointing at the newly installed security cameras and alarm system, Bob yelled. A friend had installed the security measures in my room, where the safe was kept. I had been consulting with this friend about Bob and his family for some time and decided to beef up security on her advice. Bob and his wife had planned to steal only cash from my room and secretly dispose of the bank books and other documents. They dared to take the bank books and other documents to make it look like the work of a robber from outside. Susie had heard about this plan, but since she was so distant from her parents, she told me everything. Well, you finally showed your true colors. Not working and treating your daughter like a tool. Stealing a mother's savings? You're out of your minds.
What's wrong with going into one's parents' room? I'm your family, living here with you. This is just nitpicking.
As Bob repeated his excuses in front of the security company representative, I confronted him with various pieces of evidence that Susie and I had gathered. He didn't transfer to another job but was actually fired, which led to them being kicked out of their company-provided home. There are also testimonies from acquaintances that he lied about working and was actually drinking and hanging out during the day. Among those was a claim that Lucy had been frequently visiting luxurious bars and spending a fortune there. Bob seemed unaware of this and stared at Lucy with his mouth agape in surprise.
I don't want to think of you two as my parents. I truly despise you,
Susie said, looking straight at her parents, her words filled with disdain. Upon hearing these harsh words from his daughter, Bob became almost hysterical.
I don't know what you've been telling Susie, but she's ours. I'll cut ties with you and make sure we never see each other again. I'll even make her quit high school and work for us for the rest of her life. Enough is enough.
The person who shouted at the out-of-control Bob wasn't me, but a friend.
As an educator and as a human being, I can't tolerate adults who treat and hurt their precious children like objects. I truly despise you both.
Who the heck is this old lady? My friend restrained me from responding immediately, shaking her head. Her name is Nora Peterson. True to her word, she is an educator and had been informed by a fellow teacher about Susie's struggles at school. Right after I consulted Nora about Susie, she started reaching out to school officials and related agencies. Behind the scenes, she was pulling strings to help resolve Susie's problems as soon as possible.
What you've been doing is clear-cut abuse. If you plan on taking her away, I have no problem taking legal action.
Nora spoke calmly, but her voice betrayed undeniable anger. Witnessing the fierce demeanor of Nora, they must have finally realized the gravity of the situation. Bob, still restrained, and Lucy were clearly flustered, their gazes wandering aimlessly. Perhaps understanding that siding with Bob wasn't in her best interest, Lucy approached Susie with a shaky gait.
Susie, honey, I know how you feel about your dad, but you wouldn't abandon your mom, right? You still love me, don't you?
Who does Susie think is to blame for her feeling out of place at school? Even though Susie worked her tail off at her part-time job, all the money ended up in her parents' pockets. There's no sympathy left for her mother who mindlessly spent her time at bars, while never reprimanding her father Bob's misdeeds. Susie hid behind me and Nora, rejecting the hand her mother reached out to her.
You get it now, don't you? This isn't my idea, but a choice Susie made on her own.
Both Bob and Lucy, with quivering lips, send us despair-filled looks. It's too little too late now, no matter how much they regret. In exchange for not getting the law involved with everything that happened now or in the past, I made sure the couple promised never to show up in front of me again. After ensuring the couple left, I repeatedly thanked the security company's staff and asked him to leave. I expressed my deepest gratitude to Nora, who supported us until the end. Nora kindly listened to words from a downtrodden Susie before she left us. You know, I had dreams until I was in middle school. There was this high school I wanted to attend, and I worked hard studying to get in. The high school Bob and Lucy told her to give up on due to lack of money was a reputable private high school in town, kinda like a sought-after prep school in Massachusetts. From then on, Susie, having lost her dreams, didn't immerse herself in high school life and lost her spirit, she shared. After hearing Susie's story, Nora warmly smiled.
That's the high school where your grandmother volunteers. Why don't you try taking the entrance exams in the fall?
Susie looked up at Nora's words.
Oh my, it's not every day that the principal personally invites you. Susie, it's never too late to chase your dreams, right?
With wide eyes, Susie murmured. The principal? And shared a laugh with me while gazing at Nora. Susie clung to the school brochure handed to her by Nora as if it was a treasured possession. Months passed, from summer to fall and fall to winter. As for the couple, a heated argument in their cramped apartment led the neighbors to call the cops. The money Lucy took from Bob, which she spent all on some guy at a bar, was probably one of the reasons. Bob lost his temper when told,
"If there's no money, there's no reason to stay together."
I heard through the grapevine that the incident led to their divorce. Being abandoned by his younger wife, whom he doted on, Bob seemed to be completely down and out, but now appears to have settled down. On the other hand, with encouragement from Principal Nora, Susie decided to transfer to her original first-choice high school starting in September. With available scholarship programs and special student privileges, there's nothing to worry about financially. Receiving advice from my friend Nora, child consultation centers, and related organizations, I officially became Susie's guardian. Instead of commuting from my home, Susie decided to live in the school dormitory. Because the couple knew the location of my house, we decided it was best for Susie not to live with me for her safety. Yet, I don't feel lonely. I'm still pretty clueless about technology and finances, but thanks to my granddaughter, I'm starting to think about the future. I'm consulting with a lawyer to find the best way to leave an inheritance for Susie without burdening her. When I went to do my volunteer work and met Susie at the school, she was surrounded by many friends. Seeing the radiant happiness on my granddaughter's face, I felt deeply relieved. Then, Kevin, with an innocent look on his face, said something horrifying.
"Well, your mother-in-law is gonna pass away soon, right? We're getting the inheritance, so why do we need to work?"
At those words, I was beyond angry, I was simply flabbergasted. And then, Kevin continued speaking.
"I visited her the other day to get some pocket money. She looked really bad. I think she doesn't have much time left. Can't wait for the inheritance. I'm so excited."
Saying that, he began fiddling with his smartphone with a grin that suggested he might start humming a tune. To put it mildly, I thought he was a devil disguised as an angel. Kevin had turned greedy and sold the violin my mother cherished. I was already disappointed in Kevin, but now I felt utterly devastated. If you want to be spoiled by a woman, go ahead. If there's someone who would indulge you, then leech off them for as long as you want. But I won't ever indulge you again. You, who can only repay kindness with spite, should get a glimpse of hell. I will never forgive you. I am Catherine Thompson, a 37-year-old housewife. Last year, I married Kevin and we lived together without any children. I met Kevin at work. Once, Kevin joined the company I worked for as a temporary staff member. His elusive attitude, making it unclear if he had any motivation or not, seemed to frustrate the trainers of the new employee orientation. Eventually, the trainers handed him off to me for guidance. When I asked him why he wasn't taking the training seriously, Kevin said,
"Well, the trainers were men. And old ones at that. If someone like you was in charge from the start, I would have worked harder."
And with that, he gave me a mischievous smile. Somehow, Kevin's smile made my heart waver a bit. Even though he was approaching his 30s, Kevin had this charm that evoked a protective or maternal instinct. Back then, not just me, but most senior female bosses adored him. Because I was always guiding Kevin, seeing him get along with other female bosses made me feel a tinge of jealousy. Reading my feelings, Kevin once said,
"I only want to be taught by you, Catherine,"
and gave me that carefree smile of his. That's when I started to understand why some women get hooked on those charming ladies' man. Around that time, my mother, Alice, fell ill. She always had chronic health issues, but recently she got so bad she couldn't get up. She decided not to be hospitalized and received care at home. Kevin and I worked for one of the companies managed by my mother. If something were to happen to my mother, I'd have a mountain of things to consider, including the management of the family business and financial matters. I decided to take a leave of absence from work, especially with the wish of caring for my mother. Just when I thought I wouldn't see Kevin anymore, he asked me out. He said, "Catherine, I want to be with you from now on." And so, we started dating. After dating for some time and considering marriage, I introduced Kevin to my mother. At that time, my mom, who had been looking pale due to her illness, seemed to brighten up and feel better as she talked with Kevin. I thought to myself, "That's Kevin, always charming older women." Still, I was happy to see my mother and Kevin get along so well. Later on, Kevin agreed to my strong wish to keep my family's surname, Thompson. So we decided to tie the knot. Kevin has always had a knack for being pampered. Even when we were dating, I paid for all our dates. That hasn't changed since we got married. Even a year into our marriage, Kevin never reaches for his wallet. Every time the bill comes, he always steps back a bit and looks at me with those puppy dog eyes. And with those eyes, he seems to silently plead, "Could you please pay?" Seeing him like that, I can't help but feel, "Oh well." And I always end up paying. Admittedly, I earn more than Kevin, who's currently a temp worker. Even after our monthly expenses, thanks to my savings, we live comfortably. When I asked Kevin if it hurt his pride as a man that I always paid, he replied nonchalantly, "What pride? It's common these days for women to be the breadwinners, ain't it?" Even as a temp worker, if Kevin put in a bit more effort, he could secure a full-time position. Up until I took my leave, I felt like I'd given him enough guidance. Not only about work but also about business etiquette and the mindset needed for his job. I also wanted Kevin to understand the responsibilities that came with marriage. However, against all my expectations, Kevin quit his job all too easily. When I pressed him for a reason, Kevin, with a seemingly innocent face, asserted a shocking statement.
"Why work? Your mom's gonna pass away soon, right? We'll inherit her assets, so why bother?"
I was flabbergasted and couldn't even muster anger at his words. Then Kevin continued.
"You know, I went to see her the other day to get some allowance, but she looked pretty bad. I think she won't last much longer. Can't wait for the inheritance. It's gonna be exciting." Saying that, he began fiddling with his smartphone, a smirk on his face as if he might start humming any second. That was the moment I realized that Kevin, to put it mildly, was a devil in an angel's disguise. I was at my mother's house again today. By the afternoon, my sister Mary had returned to our mother's house. Mary had married young, and her kids are already in college, living on their own out of state. Her husband, Bob, is on a business assignment abroad, so Mary has been staying at our mother's house lately. I take care of our mother mornings while Mary is at work. Speaking of which, Kevin came by the other day. He said he was here to pay a visit, but he just sweet-talked Mom into giving him some money and left. Isn't he working yet? Again? I thought, feeling deflated. It seems Kevin has been visiting my mother several times when I'm not around. And getting money from my mother has become a pattern. Before we got married, when I brought Kevin to meet my mom, he seemed to accidentally notice that she had a vast fortune. That's probably why he quit his job, banking on the inheritance, and keeps coming for handouts. What a leech. Indeed, the mansion where my mother lives is on the most elevated piece of land around here, and the entrance is quite impressive. This house was built by our late father, who was also quite wealthy. When he passed away, my mother took over all of his businesses and expanded the wealth even further. Now, just from her businesses alone, she has assets worth $13 million. Kevin was staring intently at that violin in Mom's room. There's a violin showcased in my mother's room. It seems to be a keepsake from our father, who once aspired to be a musician. No matter how wealthy she became, our mother often said there's nothing more precious than that violin. It was so Kevin to have the sharp instincts to notice the value of that violin. "Mary, next time Kevin comes over, you don't have to give him any money." But Mom keeps giving it to him. It's really frustrating. I felt defeated again. Though I've only been married to Kevin for just over a year, I need to consider our future together. Seeing me downcast, Mary reached out.
There are men who live off women with money, you know. Kevin probably lived like that too. Don't worry, if you decide to divorce, I'm on Catherine's side. Mary's words were a great comfort. Perhaps Kevin will change in the future. Divorce was always an option, so I decided I would think about it if and when necessary. One day, my mother's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. After eating a little breakfast, she went to sleep but suddenly began to struggle. Luckily, both my sister and I were at Mom's house that morning, so we noticed right away. Mom fell into a coma. The doctor who arrived told us to prepare for the worst, and both Mary and I struggled to keep our composure. Somehow, Mom held on till the next day. During that time, Mary's kids and Bob, who came from abroad, visited. Yet, despite having taken so much allowance from her, Kevin was nowhere to be seen. It might be the last chance to see my mother. Late that night, surrounded by her family, my mother passed away. I believe her last moments were peaceful. Bob and the kids were crying with sorrow. I was heartbroken too. Since the doctor had told us to be prepared, Mary and I could swiftly move on to the next steps. Planning the funeral, notifying various people. Thanks to our prior preparations, things proceeded relatively smoothly. I sent Kevin a message, telling him about Mom's passing and the details of the funeral. It was obvious from the checkmark on the message that he read it, but he didn't reply. Perhaps he's in shock, I thought, and waited for him to show up at the funeral. At the funeral, Mary and I greeted the people who had close friendships with Mom during her lifetime. Executives from her company, longtime friends, so many gathered for her. Knowing how much she was loved by everyone, my heart swelled with emotions. Then, Bob approached us, looking very distressed.
I went to bring the violin Mom cherished to place it at the venue, but it's gone,
he exclaimed. I couldn't help but exclaim.
What?
We had been so busy from the time Mom passed until the funeral and had left Mom's house unattended. Could it have been robbed during that time? Mary looked surprised too. I remembered what Mary had told me the other day. She said that Kevin was watching the violin intently. I quickly called Kevin, who hadn't yet appeared at the funeral. To my surprise, he answered after only 2 rings. Hey Kevin, what are you up to? Aren't you coming to the funeral? Where are you? Maybe because I was firing questions at him, Kevin laughed over the phone.
You're bombarding me with questions, that's kinda funny. Your mother passed away, right? It took longer than I thought. I've been waiting and I'm kinda tired.
I wanted to yell at Kevin for his insensitive remark, but I held back, urging him to come to the funeral right away. Then Kevin made another shocking statement.
I'm kinda in the middle of something right now. You know the violin in your mom's room? The one called a Barius or something? There's a collector who wants to buy that old thing, and I'm in the middle of selling it.
I couldn't believe my ears. Kevin was selling my mother's violin.
Kevin, stop that process right now. Do you want trouble?
I desperately tried to stop him. That violin is something that should never be sold.
No can do. The buyer is really eager, and they've got the cash ready. Well, gotta go. Good luck with the funeral. See ya.
With that, Kevin hung up the phone. I couldn't share this about Kevin with everyone at the funeral. I decided to discuss it with Mary and Bob later on. Driven by greed, Kevin had sold the violin my mother cherished. I was already disappointed in Kevin, but now I felt utterly devastated. If you want to lean on a woman, go ahead. If you have someone who'll let you, then keep doing it and live off them. But I'm never gonna pamper you again. You, who can only repay kindness with malice, should go through hell. I will never forgive you. I screamed in my heart. After the viewing and the burial, Mary, Bob, and I took a brief rest at my mother's house. Just because the funeral was over, didn't mean everything was settled. My mother had a broad range of businesses, so there were a lot of things to sort out. But before that, I had to settle things with it. It's about Kevin. In the end, Kevin didn't show up for the entire funeral, including the viewing or even the burial. Considering how much he had leaned on my mother, I've totally given up on him because he didn't even say a last goodbye. What finally made me so was that Kevin had sold that violin. I hadn't yet told Mary and Bob about it.
Anyway, I wonder where Mom's violin ended up. Depending on the situation, we might need to consult with the police.
Mary, unaware of everything, looked concerned, resting her chin on her hand. Well, we might have to get the police involved. Catherine, I called someone who knows about the violin, so it'd be good to hear from them directly. Oh, look, here they come. As I said that, a loud engine noise could be heard from a distance. The sound of the engine stopped right in front of our house. Soon after, the sound of a car door slamming shut was heard. And just as I thought that, without even ringing the doorbell, Kevin burst into the house.
Hey, Catherine, sorry I missed the funeral. Did a lot of sympathy money come in?
Is he really, being as insensitive as this extent, a human? Mary and Bob clearly looked displeased.
Kevin, why didn't you show up at the viewing or the burial? After all the things Mom did for you, aren't you sad about her passing?
I tried to keep my anger in check as I confronted Kevin a bit. Kevin replied sarcastically. Well, I'm sad, you know? I won't get any more allowance, right? When I use Mom's money for the slot machines, I win quite often. Guess folks who are good with money have luck as well. And without waiting for me to bring it up, he started talking about the violin himself. Turns out, you can't get an inheritance right away. I couldn't wait for all the legal procedures, so I asked an acquaintance to sell the violin at Mom's room. At Kevin's words, Mary's eyes widened in shock.
What? You sold it? That violin?
Bob, sitting next to her, looked just as stunned.
Yeah, and I sold it for $170,000, so I went ahead and bought a car.
Hearing this, Mary burst out laughing, her face turning bright red. A moment later, Bob also broke into loud laughter. Only Kevin looked baffled.
Did you really sell it for $170,000?
Mary couldn't stop her laughter. Kevin looked at me with a scowl, as if saying,
What do you mean?
All I could say was, I'm sorry for your loss. Now, Kevin's face turned beet red with anger. It was a rare expression for Kevin, who normally never got angry. I began to feel amused.
Was that loud car just pulled up yours?
I teased Kevin, asking him. Kevin, trying to keep a straight face, began to brag about his car which he claimed to have bought for $170,000.
Oh yeah. You know this house is right on top of a steep hill, right? It used to be tough getting up here, but that car has some serious horsepower. So, hills like this are no issue at all.
Kevin sounded so smug, it was comical. Watching him, Mary, who had been laughing her head off, chimed in.
Kevin, you made a mistake. You shouldn't have sold that violin. It might even be illegal. That violin is a replica.
Kevin looked bewildered for a moment.
Even if it's a replica, it's crafted so well that an amateur might not tell the difference.
Mary continued. However, for someone who loves violins enough to collect them, they'd spot the difference in an instant.
My dad wanted to be a musician when he was young. But, of course, he didn't have much money back then. He couldn't afford a real violin he always admired. One day, he got a replica that looked just like the real thing. Still, my dad cherished that violin. He even played it when he proposed to my mom. She was so happy with it, even after my dad passed away, she took good care of that violin.
Listening to Mary, Kevin's expression grew tense. I wondered how and to whom he had sold it. He probably chose a shady dealer.
I had a certificate with it. When I said it was owned by a wealthy person and came with a certificate, someone wanted to buy it immediately.
Both Mary and I sighed. His thinking was just too naive.
Kevin, you should have checked it carefully. That wasn't a certificate. It was a love letter from my dad to my mom, mimicking a certificate. He probably gave it to Mom when he proposed her. I wonder how the buyer will react when they see it. It's gonna be interesting,
I said. Kevin's face turned pale. Honestly, I couldn't feel sorry for Kevin at all. Even if it was a replica, he had no right to sell Mom's cherished possession. I was not about to let him off the hook. At that moment, Kevin's cell phone rang. With a pale face, Kevin answered the call.
Hello?
As he said it, I could hear the furious shouting from the other end of the line.
Hey, Kevin, what did you do? The buyers lodged a complaint. They said it was clearly a fake, they could tell at a glance. They're demanding $170,000 back now. They said they're gonna report you to the police if you don't pay.
Just as I had thought. The person on the phone was probably the broker who had facilitated the sale. It's questionable that the broker didn't verify the item properly, and the buyer, for wanting to buy such a rare item for immediate cash without proper verification, is equally to blame. In any case, it doesn't seem like a legitimate transaction. Anybody who have a good judge can tell a knockoff from the real deal in a heartbeat. Even though it was my mom's treasured item, there's no way it's worth $170,000. Given that the certificate of authenticity is clearly a joke, the excuse of not knowing it's a fake might not fly. Kevin was desperately trying to reason with the broker, but it looked like his only options were to refund the money or face the police. Just after buying a new car, Kevin ended up having to part with it. He hung up, looking utterly defeated. Watching him, Mary and her husband were smirking as if to say, "I told you so." As for me, as long as my mother's precious violin returns, I'm good. About that violin though. Doing wrong is still wrong. More misfortune awaited Kevin. Bob, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke up. "By the way, Kevin, if you're planning to sell your car, where is it? Didn't he drive here?" At Bob's words, I too peeked out the window at the front door. Indeed, Kevin should have arrived by car, but Kevin's car wasn't where it was supposed to be parked in front of the entrance.
That can't be, I locked it. Oh, no!
Realizing something, Kevin rushed outside barefooted, only to find his car had rolled down the street and crashed into the fence of a large house down the hill. Geez, did he forget to set the handbrake or something? I sighed, watching Kevin race towards his wrecked car. Unfortunately, the car hit from the hood and the front of the car was smashed in. It might be tough to sell. It seems it's going to cost a fortune to get it fixed. That house the car hit, isn't that the old mob boss's place that's been there for years? Tough break, Kevin. I silently muttered sorry for your loss to myself again. Not long after Kevin headed to the scene of his wrecked car, we went over to Mr. Mob Boss's place to apologize. After all, we were family, so we sincerely apologized for what Kevin did. Interestingly enough, the boss has been a neighbor for a long time and seemed to be good friends with my mother. He even attended my mother's funeral. The gentlemanly boss, in turn, expressed his condolences for our mother's passing and seemed to notice that my husband, son-in-law, was not at the funeral. This time, he stated that because it was solely Kevin's recklessness, he was the only one to be held responsible. As we were leaving, I glanced at the wall the car hit. It was heartbreaking to see the fine brick wall damaged. The moment we all got back to Mom's house, Kevin started talking about the inheritance again. "Hey Catherine, when am I gonna get my share of the inheritance? Man, if it wasn't for Mom's inheritance, it would have been over." Kevin seemed oddly relieved. Seeing his misunderstanding, I felt the need to set him straight. "What are you talking about? You're not inheriting a single cent." Kevin's face was a clear picture of confusion. I informed him that, being just a son-in-law and not having been legally adopted, he had no right to an inheritance.
Why not? I was really looking forward to getting that inheritance.
He's truly an insensitive and tactless man. Well, Catherine will inherit, so there's something in it for me. I felt tears coming by seeing Kevin, who seemed to only think about money. I pulled out a few photographs from my bag and laid them on the table. Seeing them, Kevin went pale again. "Looking back, I really regret ever marrying you. I didn't mind your clingy side, but marriage is a serious commitment, with legal implications, way more than you think." Then, the doorbell rang. It was the police. "Ah, that's me who made a call. Didn't someone steal Mom's violin?" So, while you all were talking earlier, I contacted the police. Under Mary's guidance, the police tried to detain Kevin. Kevin, crying, resisted.
"Hey, why? You should overlook theft among family members, shouldn't you?
His loud admission of the theft was so naive, it almost made him seem adorable. From an outsider's perspective, at least. Although he called it family, it wasn't the case he lived with. Even if I inherited it as an inheritance, it's still considered personal property, so it can't escape being theft. I watched Kevin's back as he was put into the police car and whispered, "Goodbye."
Mom, I'm sorry for causing so much worry this time. If you have something to say, feel free to visit me in my dreams.
Saying that, I thought of my mother and prayed in my heart. In the end, various charges were imposed on Kevin, and it seems he's facing fines and compensations. He has admitted to the theft of the violin. He's being sued for fraud over that violin, but since Kevin didn't know it was a replica, the outcome is uncertain. Additionally, there are costs for repairing the fence at the gang leader's house and miscellaneous payouts for me. Apparently, some of the women Kevin was unfaithful with lent him a lot of money. When it was discovered that he was married, he was asked to return the money he had borrowed along with the breakup. Kevin has fallen into a whirlwind of debt, and right now, we're undergoing divorce mediation through our lawyers. Kevin brought up property division, but since I've been on leave since our marriage, we haven't really built any joint assets. I told him as much. Above the fireplace in the living room, photos of my mom and dad were placed side by side. I stared at them, thinking,
I hope you two have met again on the other side.
Next to the photos, my father's heirloom violin was displayed. We really wanted the violin returned, so we explained the situation to the buyer and got it back. The $170,000 were funds we squeezed out of my mother's inheritance. More than anything, getting the violin back was the top priority. Kevin plans to pay back the $170,000 in full.
Catherine, make sure you don't fall for another moocher next time.
Mary looked a little lonely since Bob had gone back abroad. Since I'm now single, I'm thinking of staying at my mother's house for a while. Again, it seems the women Kevin cheated with were ones he had previously mooched off of. The detective I hired to investigate Kevin told me. Kevin has gotten a little money from a lawyer and wanted to show these women his manly side, which is none of my business any longer. It seems he joined my company without any real intention of working, likely looking for another easy mark. And I turned out to be his target. Mary pointed it out to me, and I deeply reflected on my past actions. I learned from a private investigator that Kevin had been estranged from his parents a long time ago. Apparently, they were utterly disappointed with Kevin for not working and relying on women to support him. I can relate to their feelings more than ever now. The fact that Kevin, as an adult, couldn't live without leeching off women makes me pity him. Maybe when he was younger, there were women willing to support him. However, living like that for the rest of his life seems nearly impossible. I hope this incident makes Kevin reflect on his actions and realize the value of working and earning money. I've returned to work after my leave. The company my mother left behind is gonna be taken over by Bob, and he'll be returning from abroad soon. That's why Mary's been cheerful recently, and I've been enjoying the hearty breakfasts made by her. When I was getting ready to head to work and about to put on my shoes. Oh, almost forgot. I took off my half-putted-on shoes and went to the living room to say my morning prayer. Then I talked to my parents as usual. Off I go, Mom and Dad. Hope today's gonna be a good day. With that, I opened the front door and stepped out.